Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 301, cover dated June 1993. So the cover caption here, Assault on Eerie, featuring Forge and Mystique, covered by John Romita Jr. and Dan Green, and looking pretty dynamic. We've got Forge blasting away there at Trevor Fitzroy in his robot exoskeleton suit, first seen back in Uncanny X-Men 281. So there's callbacks throughout in this story to the Whilce Portacio era, and indeed all the way back to John Romita Jr.'s introduction of Forge with Chris Claremont in Uncanny X-Men 184 to around 187. So let's open this one up to the splash page. So last seen in Uncanny X-Men 283, we have Selene here being tortured, and as it turns out, if we turn the page, she is being tortured by Trevor Fitzroy, who has in that interim period taken her prisoner, and he is mocking her here, and she says the moment that she's free, well obviously she's going to kill him. And he says to her, "I'm afraid you'll expire long before you're free, Selene. The Black Queen gone the way the rest of the Hellfire Club's inner circle. The only reason you're still alive is because I need your pain and suffering, your honest reaction to this unique form of torture, to get attention of the Gamesmaster." So he explains here, uplit, and also with this interesting technique of Romita Jr.'s at this time period of rendering shadow on the face in terms of these hatching lines that delineate the planes of the face as well. And I'll point that out again in some other panels later on in the issue. I like it. So he says, "Since I'm not the leader of the Upstarts, not yet anyway, I'm forced to be more creative in how I petition the man for an audience." So only the leader of the Upstarts gets to call on the Gamesmaster. So he's using this torture of Selene to get the Gamesmaster's interest. And then he appears and says, "And don't think we don't appreciate it," to Selene when she says here that, Fitzroy is ungrateful. She created the Upstarts, hoping competition would forge you spoiled brats into the next generation of mutant leaders. And Gamesmaster appears, "And don't think we don't appreciate it, Your Majesty," in quotation marks. "Gamesmaster, may I assure you by your astral projection you've agreed to my request for a meeting of all the Upstarts," says Fitzroy. And Gamesmaster responds, "Yes, if for no other reason than your machinations have provided a momentary respite from my condition." So what is his condition? It's one of boredom, and also he needs distraction from being an omnipath. That is to say that he's in direct mental contact with every mind on the planet. We're going to see a nice illustration of that subsequently. So the essence of Fitzroy is ripped from his mutant body, and then Bantam here leans over the body. He's checking for a pulse there, and Selene asks, "Is he dead?" No such luck. His body is intact, his mind, however. And now we get this double page spread, and it is quite an interesting one. I'm going to have to move this down and up for you to get a look on video. Just make sure that's in frame as much as possible. So the someplace else is specifically as possible the mind of the young mutant known only as the Gamesmaster, an omnipath. He has for some time now found himself in constant contact with nearly every sentient mind on the planet. Loves, hates, desires float unbidden through his mind like faded memories, and the diversity of emotion would drive him mad if not for the blessed release of the game, the Upstarts. So that's why he's into this. So we've got our Upstart members here in astral form. Trevor Fitzroy, of course. Shinobi Shaw there, about to enjoy himself again. He's the hedonist of the group. Then we've got the new member, first appeared in X-Men Unlimited #1, Sienna Blaze. And there's a video on that issue on Comics Bazaar, so you can check that out now if you haven't already. Of course, there is Fabian Cortez, the heretofore undisputed forerunner of the Upstarts, but his points are in arbitration, and that is because it seems Magneto is not dead. And then finally Graydon Creed, who isn't a mutant, but he's the leader of the Friends of Humanity. And Gamesmaster makes the point, well, he has yet to kill a single mutant. He intends to make up for in quantity what he lacks in quality. So the Upstarts, a diverse bunch, including a anti-mutant human in the competition. So the Gamesmaster enjoys the fun of that. Great double page spread. Let's go back to the story now. And we've got some bickering here among them all, and basically it all boils down to the Gamesmaster indicating to them who the next target is in the game. And he says, as you are aware, the universe is in a constant state of flux. At this particular moment in the time-space continuum, there is one man whose actions during the next 24 hours will directly affect the fate of every Homo superior on this planet, unless he suffers an untimely demise. Ignorant of this fact himself, he is the mutant called Forge. So Forge is designated a target for them, and the rules are whoever calls the meeting gets dibs on the identified target. And then we have yet another splash page, and this is back at Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Colossus. Were he a normal human, he would have been dead by now, if not from the wounds inflicted upon him by the mutant hunter called the Executioner. And this is a reference to Uncanny X-Men Annual 17. And I remember at the time that I first picked this up off the racks, Uncanny X-Men Annual 17 hadn't been published yet. It wasn't available. It came out after this story. So at the time I was taken aback by what had happened to Colossus and wondering if I'd missed an issue. And really, it was bad scheduling on the part of the X office to have this appear to us, the readers, and then to have the annual come out later. And also, while I'm on the topic of the annual, it's my opinion that annuals, just like in the Claremont era, shouldn't be necessarily required reading. They should be special events, sure. Like a cool artist like Art Adams or Alan Davis drawing them, but it shouldn't be the case that a reader has to pick them up to be all caught up on the main comic continuity. That's my feeling anyway. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. So he's here visiting his sister Ilyana. We've got the title of the story, Dominion, and the creative team: Scott Lobdell, writer; John Romita Jr., penciler; Dan Green, inker; Chris Eliopoulos, letterer; and Steve Buccellato, colorist. And I'm minded of the fact that Buccellato was a colorist who had a high opinion of certain pencilers that he felt were able to draw with an eye for the color that would come later. And he mentioned two artists in particular that he enjoyed working with who had that cognizance of the color to come, and the two artists that he mentioned were Mark Silvestri, that he worked with on Wolverine, and John Romita Jr. So we have this little tender interview between Peter and his little sister Ilyana. She's sick from what he believes is a flu. It's something else entirely. She has been moved from her normal bed into this Shi'ar tech, infirmary tech here. We've got a Shi'ar sigil here. Very cool design by Romita Jr. And basically the two of them have a chat and then they hug, because that's really what she wants from him. Just no promises, just a big hug from her big brother. And outside watching, monitoring, are Moira MacTaggart and Professor X. Professor X not having shaved, so he's working all out on trying to find a cure for the legacy virus. Moira thinks that he should tell Peter about the fact that they suspect that Ilyana has the legacy virus and that she's going to die. So Moira says here with a tear falling on her cheek, "Tell him what you do know, Charles, that we believe the mutant named Strife has unleashed a virus on the mutant population, his legacy. And there is precious little good you, me, or all the Shi'ar technology in the universe can do to stop it from taking the life of his sister. But Professor X has hope. He says, "You're assuming Ilyana's condition is related to the recent cases we've studied and what's more, untreatable." And Moira isn't having any of it. She says, "You're not being reasonable. Look at how wildly her DNA helix is fluctuating. It's exactly the way it was with Mastermind. You cannot deny it." Now, we need a footnote here to say that the business with Mastermind also occurred in X-Men Annual 17. He died from the legacy virus in that annual. And she continues, "Your Shi'ar diagnostic can barely make heads or tails of those readings." But Professor X says, "That's why I've taken steps to ensure someone who can understand those readings takes a look at them. The only person I know capable of talking to the alien technology and adapting it to our needs is, well, it's Forge in Dallas." But here again, we have this technique of Romita Jr.'s to indicate shade with these single hatch lines and also delineating the planes of the human head as well here on Professor X. I really like this feature of his modern 1993 style. So then we switch to Dallas, Texas, and this is Forge's home, and we get a little kind of Claremont-esque little introduction to the plaza. According to the tour books, Eagle Plaza is, quote, "the largest capital finance megaplex in all the Lone Star State." The Pentagon, however, has a different classification entirely. Quote, "The Eerie serves as primary living space and laboratory for weapons manufacturer and techno-futurist, the mutant inventor known only as Forge." And so here he is up in the penthouse reviewing or looking out over the city and thinking something actually interesting. Not the first mistake I've ever made, he thinks, won't be the last. I'd even like to pretend I don't know why I did it, why I didn't leave word with Nightcrawler about the recent discovery in Kuwait. So this references Uncanny X-Men 299 when he was in Kuwait with Henry Peter Gyrick, investigating the remains of Asteroid M, which wasn't as destroyed as much as one would think. And of course, the previous issue, Uncanny X-Men 300, when he met Nightcrawler in northern France, just to give him a portable Cerebro unit before he left because he didn't want to meet with Storm. And he continues his thoughts here as he tinkers with some new device. While there's no proof Magneto survived the destruction of Asteroid M, can't help thinking I should have presented Xavier with the evidence and let him draw his own conclusions. Problem being, I was more concerned with putting distance between myself and Ororo. And then in to interrupt his thoughts is this person. "So who is this? You left me alone again," she says. "You know how much I hate alone." So if we turn the page. By the way, I just want to compliment Romita Jr. on the art here. I think this is a great combination of penciler, inker, Dan Green, and also colorist Buccellato. I love the colors rendering the skyline here. Really, really nice work. And the interior colors as well, and the arrival of this character. So she grabs, not grabs, but holds Forge's hand and says it's time for their workout. And then he addresses her, "Man of my word, Raven, that's me." So this is Raven Darkholme. It's Mystique, last seen in Uncanny X-Men 290 when Forge took her away from the X-Mansion because she was going mad. And he says here, "I said if you refrained from morphing, if you picked one physical form and stuck with it for 3 days, we could go back to working out together." So he has been helping her to rehabilitate after a mental breakdown. And she says to him, "Forge, I want you to know I appreciate everything you've done for me over the past few weeks, ever since Irene died. It's been getting progressively harder just to concentrate on being myself." And this, of course, is reference to Uncanny X-Men 255. And also in that issue, and there's a video review of that issue on the channel if you want to look for it, Irene Adler told Mystique that she foresaw a future between her and Forge. So we are seeing that come about now. And Forge replies to her, "Losing someone you love can have a devastating effect on one's self-image under the best of circumstances. For a shapeshifter, And she completes the thought, it's a living nightmare. Funny, I spent so many years pretending to be one person or the other. I'm afraid I lost track of the real me somewhere along the way. So then they go for their workout, but someplace else, and closing fast. Who have you got except for Storm? And she's in the middle of a conversation with Bishop. The next time Jubilee asks if you and I are dating, Bishop, because there was some hints about that in issues 289, 290, that maybe Bishop had some feelings for Aurora. She says to him, none of your business. Sorry, she says the correct response is no. None of your business would also be appropriate. So that's fairly clear. Storm has no interest in Bishop, and she's quite plain about it. And he says here, he asks her, I don't mean to be rude, but is this journey a good idea, Aurora? Sending you to petition the aid of the man whose heart you broke. Not that this is any of your concern, Bishop, but my feelings for Forge, his feelings for me, were never in question. Our relationship, such as it was, ended because of different life views. He had a right to his, I to mine. I'm certain that he's enough of a professional that he will not allow, but they're interrupted by a warning from Cerebro, picking up an unidentified mutant life form, homing in on the Eerie, traveling at an incredible fast speed. So she says she hasn't seen readings such as these. She's never seen readings such as those. So what is going on? What's zooming in on the Eerie? So at that moment, Forge and Mystique are going through their workout when there is a security alert, a perimeter breach, and Mystique transforms into her usual form, and Forge activates the outer security camera to put a face to the intruder. So here it is, Fitzroy shattered because he shattered the lens, a titanium polymer lens no less. So then he arrives and he's wearing his exoskeleton, and he's threatening to suck the life essence out of Forge's body. So very dramatic art here by Romita Jr. This is a very cool image. I love magenta. I've said it in many videos before. I think it's a cool color to use, very striking. So Forge is protective of Mystique here. He's telling her they're going to get away. He sets off this Interact program, Forge's Defense interactive program. They land on this hoverboard and they begin their escape. But Forge jumps off and he grabs a gun to take care of the mystery guest, as he says. And he tells Mystique to go get help. So now we're going to get Forge facing off against an overconfident Fitzroy. He says that his body armor is constructed out of omnium mesh. It is impregnable. It was created 100 years in the future. But Forge says, this geothermal 960 I'm holding is constructed out of a vibranium polymer. It hurts like all get out. It was created by me this morning over breakfast. And if you haven't noticed, I've always been just a little bit ahead of my time as he blows Fitzroy out the wall of the building. So pretty cool stuff there by Forge. Then we're back to the X-Mansion. It's morning in the X-Mansion. And Bobby's had a visit from his girlfriend, Opal Tanaka, and he's a bit nervous there, babbling about whether, or the fact that he's only got coffee for her and he knows she prefers tea. And she's basically saying, I figured it was time we either talk things through about what happened to Hero or find a bigger apartment, because he's been sending her roses, a dozen roses every day since he last saw her, which was in Uncanny X-Men 290 when they had a disastrous dinner date with his parents and his bigoted father. It was a real disaster. There's videos on the channel for those two issues, 289 and 290, if you want to check them out. So then Warren arrives because the alarm has been received and they need to get to Texas, and so he has to go, and Opal basically says, now get going, you probably have a world to say. But she thinks here, no sense wasting all that time and energy on anything as trivial as the woman you love. Oof, so he's still in trouble. And let's check back at the Eerie with Forge and he's about to stand over the prone body of Fitzroy, but Fitzroy has been playing possum, and this is a cool panel. He slashes away Forge's bionic leg, and he says, "Funny you're not the warrior that picture books painted you to be. The genesis of legend would never have allowed himself to be set up so easily." And Forge talks quietly here. Genesis? Name Bishop called me the day we met, which was back in X-Men number 8, adjectiveless X-Men number 8. So who is, or what is the hint here about Forge's future and a new name, Genesis, which has to do with beginnings? Beginning of what though? Curious, yes? So he's fighting here against Fitzroy. He blows his own bionic hand up to get the better of Fitzroy, and Fitzroy here is not at all happy. "You couldn't possibly know," Fitzroy says, "as we've just met, but my father used to humiliate me like this, enjoyed making me look foolish, incompetent. Before I arrived, I was content to kill you quickly, Forge." As these claws emerge from the tips of his fingers, robotic fingers. "As it is, by the time I've decorated your home with your lower intestines, you're going to want to finish the job yourself." And then somebody asks, "Indeed? Who could this be?" Turn the page. Well, seems to be Bishop, yes. "And what reason can you think of that he'd want to miss your funeral, Trevor?" "Bishop, how did you find me?" "I looked under chronologically displaced gene trash in the phone book. Voila. It's your fault I'm trapped in this century," says Fitzroy. "You and the cursed XSE hounded me at every turn, tossing me into the pit, so that the only escape from my father's wrath was to travel back in time." So, little footnote there to Uncanny X-Men 287. You've really kind of fixated on this father deal. "Why is it we never hear about your maternal relationship?" asks Bishop. "You were there when she died at your sister's hand, and now I will avenge her murder." Interesting. So we're learning piecemeal little details of the backstory between Fitzroy and Bishop and the existence of his sister now as well. So he slashes Bishop in the abdomen, and the narrative caption says it's not a sound often attributed to torn flesh. Instead of the ripping and tearing, it's more like the noise a balloon makes when losing air, or the sound of breaking glass. So what is going on? Well, it's an illusion. It was Mystique morphed into the form of Bishop, and Forge is shocked, and because he told her to stay away and to send for help, but she did send for help, but she didn't want to miss all the fun, she says. And so Fitzroy is powering up his battle armor to set off a full neutron charge. Forge realizes this is going to kill innocent people in the plaza below. Fitzroy doesn't care, of course. And outside, just at this moment, out of the Blackbird, we've got Storm arriving. Put the ship in hover, Bishop," she says. "Then join me when you can. I will see to Forge and Mystique." But really, she's just thinking about Forge and asks that the Bright Lady protect him until I arrive. And then, narrative captions, even as she thinks these thoughts, Aurora is aware of a simple truth, that no prayer ever goes unanswered. Where the X-Men are concerned, more often than not, the answer, well, let's turn the page. Boom. The answer is no. So, just like at the end of Uncanny X-Men 227, Fall of the Mutants, the whole penthouse of Forge's Eerie is gone once again. Great art here, impactful, full panel page. Nice stuff. Next issue, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, indeed. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 301. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.